Hey guys, it's Isaiah here. We're going to go over some CAFS training today, hopefully learning how to run CAFS, the use of CAFS, not only how to use it, but what else can we use it for? What can we utilize on this truck? The new pumper tanker has a 30-gallon Class A foam tank, my bad, 40-gallon Class A foam tank, and a 100-gallon Class B foam tank. 3,000 gallons of water. Foam Pro 2000, I believe, foam pump on it to both the A and B systems, as well as CAFS. So it should be a good refresher for everybody as far as foam training. But for our pump operators, we want to get onto the operational side and show you exactly how to use it, run it. We'll get right into basics of foam. So your Class A foam is for Class A fires. We all remember our ABC extinguishers and what A, B, and C stand for, and foam's really no different. The Class A fires are for ordinary combustibles. Class A foam is an absorbing agent mixed with water and soaks into materials. Pretty simple. Remember, throughout this whole thing, you need water for this to work. Don't think that foam is taking away water. That'll never leave. Without water, we don't have foam. So remember, none of this matters if you don't have water. We're not replacing it. Typically, Class A foam is applied at 0.3 to 1%. Read your Class A foam container, see what the manufacturer recommendation is for different types of applications. But for traditional fire attacks, you're looking at a 0.3 to 0.5% typically. And depending on the Foam Pro setup, they are usually preset at 0.3 or 0.5%. The training we're going to do is just turn the Foam Pro on, and it'll already be preset to 0.3 or 0.5 to run off of Class A. So if you do the math, at 3%, for every 1,000 gallons of water, you're going to use 3 gallons of foam. On a truck with 3,000 gallons like ours, and we run our entire tank empty, and we ran foam the entire time, we are using 9 gallons of foam. So it's not as critical to save it as you would, say, Class B foam, that you're running a 6% or something like that. This is such a low rate that it's almost free, I guess. You're adding it to the water, but it's at such low concentration, you're not going to see it dwindle down like you do with sucking buckets and buckets and buckets of Class B. Unlike Class B, you're going to use Class A. But the best thing I could tell you is use it at every fire, but use it as if you're paying for it. Like I said, it's not going to replace water, so let's use our Class A foam. But then again, if it's something that this is not worth putting any money into, then don't use it. Just use straight water. Unlike Class B, you can also mix it. We can use our Class A foam for a while and then decide, you know what, we're wasting it. Let's shut it off and use straight water. Where Class B, once you revert to foam, you're going to stick with foam. You can't change it to water or you're going to break your blankets of foam, dilute it, and it'll be insufficient. Class B foam. Class B foam, again, for Class B fires. Class B fires are flammable liquids. With Class B foam, the whole purpose is to create a foam blanket that suppresses the vapors of the flammable liquids. This could be for offensive or defensive. So you're trying to put a fire out, you suppress those vapors, the fire goes out when it loses its oxygen. On a defensive side, you'd look at it as you don't want that to ignite. So we have a leak, we're going to put a foam blanket down, and that's going to suppress the vapors from reaching an ignition source. Typically, Class B foam's applied at 3 to 6%. All depends on, again, manufacturer recommendations and what you're using it on. We run ARAFFs in our trucks, which is alcohol-resistant aqueous film forming foam. Being the alcohol-resistant foam, if you read the buckets that the foam comes in, to get the alcohol-resistant, you need to run at a 3% concentrate. My bad, 6% concentrate. 3% concentrate is just for a straight AFFF, non-alcohol. So read your ERG, see what application rates you are, what you need to run at, and whether it's a polar solvent, hydrocarbon, what type of fire are you dealing with and what do you need to apply. Unlike Class A foam, at 6%, for 1,000 gallons of water, you're going to burn 60 gallons of foam. Therefore, that's 180 gallons if we run our entire truck out of water using 6% of Class B foam. Thinking about that, we have a 100-gallon tank on the truck. We will not suffice doing it. You're going to run out of foam, and then it's going to go to water, which would be bad. So, again, a lot more foam is being used here. However, if it's a 3% that you're using it on, then obviously that's going to double. You're going to be 30 gallons of foam for 100 gallons of water. So it all depends on your application rate and what's required of the fire. The great thing about our truck is, unlike our last engine there, 1137, Class B only came out of the bumper line. And that's the way we remembered it. BB bumper, Class B foam's bumper line. Class A foam was at the pump panel. With this truck, anywhere you can run foam, you can run A or B foam. So regardless whether it's the bumper, a cross lay, the deck gun, if you can run foam out of it, you can run A or B. Not at the same time. There is a selector valve, but you can run A and B foam out of every line. Typical fires are Class A and can utilize Class A foam. I put less than 5% of fires are Class B fires. That's probably less than 1%. I mean, if you really think about when's the last time we had a Class B fire, a flammable liquid fire, something we had to use Class B foam on. I'm not saying, hey, remember when we threw that Class B foam on that car fire? A true Class B fire is probably less than 1%. But definitely less than 5. Even a vehicle machinery fire, these are typically Class A fires. Occasionally the B foam is needed if there's a leak of flammable liquid that ignites or to prevent the ignition. You're going to need B foam. Everything prior to that, you're going to be Class A. Class A for, the contents of the vehicle, even the tires, Class A, you're going to benefit. Again, the only time you're going to need the Class B is flammable liquids. Create that blanket, suppress the vapors, and you won't have a problem with it. We're going to be going over the benefits of the Class A foam. Again, with most of our fires reverting to Class A. CAFS, typically you're running Class A. You can use CAFS on Class B. Yeah, you can use CAFS on Class B. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But I want to go over the benefits of Class A. Class A foam, you're going to have a faster knockdown, less chance of rekindling. That's proven. That's science. You know, the more I'm around, the more we're going to try to run this, and we can prove it. There's going to be a reduction of water damage, better preservation of evidence. That has a lot to do with the water runoff, less amount of water you're putting into a building, less damage overall. A lot of improved efficiency of water, less tanker trips, less time on scene. You could go on and on. Less manpower, less fuel. It's going to change kind of everything. And hopefully we can figure out, and around our area at least, be the first ones to witness it. Class A foam, you have the ability to make it a wet or dry foam. Dry is referred to as a shave cream type foam, and wet is going to be referred to as a watery foam. Basically, it makes water better. Your dry foam, that's going to be used more on exposure protection, something you need a really sticky blanket, stick it right to a wall so it stays there. Your wet foam is going to be more of a watered down foam that you want to penetrate. That's the main thing you're trying to get. You're trying to get in those grooves and into materials. So think about it that way. Wet foam, that's your fire suppression foam. And your dry foam is going to be more for exposure protection. Without foam in the water, surface tension holds it together, beat it on top of the surface. Blah, 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 blah. Tongue twister. Basically, water's a big bubble that doesn't want to break apart. It sits on top of whatever you put it on. That's what makes it so hard for water to soak into materials and penetrate into them to put out a fire. About 90%, 80 to 90, more towards the 90% of water being applied to a fire is wasted in runoff. Think about the last time you ran a hose line spraying something and water's running everywhere. It's bouncing off of what you're hitting it. It's running down a ditch or, out of the house, out of a doorway, anywhere. Water is running. That's all water we can't reuse. It's gone. So in a sense, we wasted the water, even though we're trying to use it to cool. Only about 10%. That leaves 10% that is absorbing into those materials. With foam in the water, the surface tension's reduced. Water will rapidly spread out and it soaks in. We're going to get into some demonstrations here that'll show you that, and hopefully you'll understand. So when you hit a fire with water, the water is going to try to stick to that surface. However, with it being beaded on top of the surface, it cannot penetrate through that material. You're still going to have burning material. You do put the fire out, but you get a lot of runoff. Again, that's wasted water. That's what we're trying to get rid of, and we're trying to put it out more efficiently. Now with foam, we're going to hit it with a CAFS. When we do, that CAFS is going to break that bubble structure, reduce that surface tension, and it makes water smaller. It's going to be able to penetrate through into those cracks and crevices, into that material, and efficiently put that out. You will have a little runoff, but it's not going to be like water. With this demonstration, this is water, a foam solution, and CAFS on a board. If you go to turn that, there's all your water running off. There's your foam solution running off. That CAFS is sticky. We can make it stick to anything. So here we are doing our own experiment at the station. That's a milliliter. of water, foam solution, and then a CAFS we used. Obviously, we don't have compressed air. We used, a stirring stick and beated it up. Run the timer, and we want to show you with all this, what is our runoff in real life. As you can see, that water sits on the cardboard. It sits on the 2x4. Your foam solution is already soaking in. Look how dark it is. We've gone 6 minutes now. We're going to tip this cardboard up, and instantly that water runs off. Boom, there goes your 90% of water. Your foam solution, it is moving. That would be equivalent to using a foam pump through your water lines, but your CAFS is stuck there. You have all those bubbles, they're not moving. Same with your 2x4. Water's going to run off. Your foam solution's going to slide. Your CAFS ain't going to do nothing. It's there, it's absorbed in the material, that's why it's a darker spot. And if you try to relight this, you're going to be unsuccessful. It will not light. The water, what's left of it there, is going to evaporate, and then it'll relight. That's your leftover water on the table. There's your foam. No CAFS. That's all your runoff out of 1 milliliter. Moving on to filling the foam cell. You want to fill, from the top of the truck, the screen in place. This will prevent anything from falling into that tank. I see a lot of people sometimes, or when you're trying to check the level, you pull that screen out to look in there. If something falls in there, it's not coming out. We can't get it out. In that second picture is the service shutoff valve. That's how the foam's coming out of the tank. And it's approximately 1 inch in diameter. Tiny. Your eyeglasses, anything goes into that tank, it will stop right there. It will not make it through, and you no longer have foam. Something definitely to think about when you're filling it. Leave it in place. If something falls, you can pick it out of there, and it's not a big deal. When you're filling it, you want to pour the foam into the fill tube. This minimizes the aeration in the foam, because essentially what you're doing is filling from the bottom of the tank upward. There's a nice little diagram there at the bottom showing how filling it goes down, raises the level up, and you're not getting all those bubbles, all that aeration. Think about dropping foam all the way down through the foam cell, hitting the bottom and aerating itself. Half of your foam cell could be bubbles. So use the fill tube. That's what it's for. It also keeps that screen in place. And you want to fill that to about 1/3 into that dome. So make sure your foam tank is full. Above that screen, you're able to see it. And life is good. It's full. Look at your meter on the truck, see if it's still full. And then from there, you'll have foam. Remember, with no foam, there's no calves. So without it, you're back to straight water. Now we're going to get into CAFS, compressed air foam system. Before this truck, we had foam systems. We injected foam into our water to make a foam solution. We have never made CAFS. You're adding air. You're adding air into your foam solution. That is all we're doing here. Nothing crazy. Hopefully, we'll get to the point here where we're all comfortable running CAFS. We're all comfortable with foam systems. A big asset, but let's see what it will do. Let's figure this thing out. Now here's an old video, but yet very true. So we've all been to barn fires. We've all been to controlled burns where we really let things get going. This video, they're using 1 3/4 hand line run off of CAFS. This will kind of give you an idea of the power. I love this video. it really shows what it'll do. I mean, they get this thing rocking. It's going. Imagine yourself on the end of that hand line with water. You know, what can you do to this fire? When they start spraying it, if you were to do that with water, would you make a dent in this thing? I believe it takes them about 12 seconds to knock this down. And they do it pretty efficiently, quickly. I know we would have 2.5s or, you know, a pipe on there, stick up in the air, putting water on it. Look at that thing go. That is pretty cool. You know, so what does CAFS do for me? You know, what does it do for us? Well, there's a lot of things. You know, what doesn't it do? It's really by your imagination. You know, for one, you have an extended stream reach. When you put water in a hose line, you have a lot of friction loss. You know, you got the weight of the water, and you got your fire pump. CAFS, you have that compressed air propelling that solution. You know, you have a lot more power behind that. You don't have the friction loss. You got a high absorption of heat. You got quick knockdown power. There's your physics. You know, they don't apply. You don't have friction loss. You don't have a water hammer. If somebody slams that nozzle shut, you got all that air in that hose line. It's going to act like a big sponge. You don't have the friction loss going down the hose. You know, actually that helps you with CAFS. You know, the longer the hose, the more scrubbing that CAFS is going to do. Basically, like scrubbing your body in the shower. You know, you're going to make more bubbles. You're making more foam. It's a good thing. There it is again, you know, make wet or dry foam. Lightweight hose lines. Lightweight hose lines. You know, all of us are out of shape. The ones that ain't out of shape are usually small. You know, I mean, lighter anything would be good for us. So for 100 foot of hose of 1.5 inches, water, you're at 103 pounds for that 100 feet. CAFS is 35. A 2.5 water weight is 271 pounds. CAFS is around 84 pounds. A huge difference. The pulling's going to be different. You know, you can stretch twice the hose, 3 times the hose you could before. It almost gives you a false sense of security, like, wow, when I open this up, there's going to be no pressure on it. And it's kind of the other way around. You know, it feels light. You don't think there's going to be pressure, but it feels like more pressure initially opening that nozzle. You're going to have that surge, and the pressure is still going to be there. Again, your dry foam is going to make awesome exposure protection. I mean, you look at this video, you ain't lighting that on fire. I don't care what you do. Yeah, pull it. It is full. It's full of our CAFS mixture. Alright, we're shooting CAFS. That's good. Alright, now pull it. Excuse the language. That was Assistant Chief Kayla. Alright, drop a cone, Nick. That's Kayla's cone. And she's done. Alright, let's drop a cone there. Alright, you can shut it off. Now pull it 200 feet. From the water line. Alright, let's drop a cone. With their CAFS lines, Kayla, Paige, and Kayla's. So let's get into the components of CAFS. You have to have your fire pump. Again, without water, there's no CAFS. Without any of these three, there is no CAFS. Your screw style air compressor. That's kind of an on-demand type air compressor that's going to give you that compressed air to make your CAFS. And then your foam proportioner. That's your foam pump. So your fire pump is going to build pressure to push water. The foam proportioner is going to figure out how much foam does that water need, and then your air compressor is going to pump the air into that to start scrubbing that foam. One important thing to remember, as soon as you turn that CAFS compressor on, the air compressor, you must be moving water. This is what cools that compressor. It is run off of a drive shaft, so if you overheat something there, it could lock you up. You have to circulate water in your fire pump anyway. So get in the habit of, when you put that thing in pump gear, open your tank to pump, open your recirc valve. That's the first thing you need to do. Then you can turn your CAFS compressor on. Even if you're using the air outlet, you have to move water. So circulate your tank, use your air outlet, or whatever you need to do to keep that compressor cool. Especially remember this when feeding from an auxiliary water supply, another truck, a hydrant, where you're not using your tank water. If you're not moving water, they close those hand lines off, you're done. So recirculate that pump. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty on how to make CAFS. It's really not much different, just adding a few steps to what you would typically do. So you're going to engage your water pump and start recirculating your water. We engage the pump before we get out of the truck, and we're going to do our tank to pump valve and tank recirc valve. That part is pretty standard. At this point, you're going to turn your systems on. CAFS, your auto sync valves, that should be on an auto run position. That's that top picture. We're going to start, or I guess we're going to leave it in that auto run position. Then it's ready. It is something you're going to have to check. Auto and run. In that auto phase, that auto syncs whatever your pump pressure is to your air pressure. So if you're running 90 psi on pump pressure, your air pressure is going to be 90 psi. On fixed, that means that it's going to be a standard pressure, which ours is like 190 pounds, almost 200 psi is fixed. That's going to be more for your air tools and stuff like that. However, I wouldn't even use it for that. I would set my pump pressure. I would use auto all the time. If it doesn't work, fix it. Use auto, set your pump pressure. That gives you your air pressure. But we're going to leave that on auto and run. you're going to hit your red CAFS or your red Foam Pro foam button. That's the same thing we have on the engine now. 1137 has one. You hit that red button, a red light comes on. That's ready to go. It's preset at 0.3%, so you're good for a fire attack. All you do is hit the red button. You're going to turn on your compressor PTO. That's that red switch there. Flip it up, fire the missile. Turn that switch on. That's going to turn on your PTO. So far, the only thing extra we're really going to do is hit that red switch and turn your compressor PTO on. Not much different. Then you're going to turn your pump pressure up. You're going to turn it up 80 to 100 psi. We're going to use kind of 90 as a reference. We don't need all that much on a hand line. Again, we're going to have air pressure behind it. So we're going to run a 90 psi. When we get up to 90 psi, you're going to notice both your air gauge and your discharge, both discharges, air and water, are going to be roughly the same. If you're on that fixed rate, that's almost 200 psi on air, that's basically going to shut your water off. If you're running 200 psi on air, 100 psi on water, pressure's pressure. It's not going to allow any water to go through. It needs to be pretty well synced. So in that auto mode, our water and our air are going to be right together. It's going to give you that mixture you need. Anyway, after we get our PSI set on our pump panel with our throttle control, we're going to open our discharge, and then you're going to turn the air supply on to the discharge being used. Here we're going to take a look at our discharge gauge. It's a 2-needle discharge gauge. Only thing different than other discharge gauges is we're adding a needle. That black needle is going to be the same as any other of your discharge gauges. That's your water pressure. Obviously, goes up and down with your throttle. The red needle shows your discharge air pressure. So when you're running an air tool, let's say, and you set your pump pressure, you're going to make sure that your air pressure is what you want it to be. On that fixed side, when you run up to 200 psi on air pressure, some air tools ain't even designed for that. We don't have airbags, but if you were going to use that for airbags, I don't know, you would have to check to make sure you know what psi you need to run that on. Like I said, leave it on auto, run your pump pressure to what you need it to be, and that air pressure is going to be right about mixed in with it. You need to check to make sure you're running a foam line before you decide to use CAFS. All of our pre-connected lines are foam lines. They make it pretty easy on the pump panel. They label them very well with red and white stickers that say foam, and everything is in the same line. So when you go to pull the discharge, you can see I circled one in yellow. You pull that lever, right above it is the air control knob to turn the air on for that discharge. As you can see, above every discharge, there's an air valve. Of course, that's to the ones that run CAFS. Up on top, at our crosslays, it's labeled there as well. This crosslay is a foam discharge. We can run foam, we can run CAFS. So again, when you go to pull that discharge, pull the discharge, reach up right straight above it, and turn on your air supply. Let's do our startup process. Tank to pump, recirculate, foam on, air PTO on, auto run on our auto sync, and we're ready for some RPM pressure. Let's boost that up to 90 psi. And from there, we're going to pull our discharge just like we typically would to send water. Right strictly above it, 90-degree turn valve. Our air's on. we are now making CAFS to that line. What else can we do with that CAFS? What can we do with that air compressor? Let's think outside the box here. We've talked about running air tools. Of course, we have an air supply. We can run air tools. What about putting air into tires? I guess hopefully that's not a problem, but if it is, we can fix that. Drain hose lines. You know, we always do the old disconnect every line, run it down a hill, put it over our shoulder. Let's get all the water out of there so we can roll it up and take it back. How about you shut the water off to that line and leave the air on, or turn the air on? Maybe you didn't even use CAFS. Let's use the air compressor because we put that illegal burnout, and let's turn on that air compressor and just push the water out of those lines with the air. You know, that's something we can do. Maybe it's on a cross lay. We do that and put it right back on the truck. You know, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. We can do airbags. You know, like I talked about before, we need to know the pressures and stuff like that. We would obviously have to have the hookups. Flotation device. I was talking to Paige the other day. What if we use our hose on our trucks for a flotation device? You know, we have French Creek here. We have a lot of hose on our trucks. What if we took 600 feet of that, connect a couple cross lays together, take that and stretch it across French Creek with air in it? You know, fill it up with air. You now have a device all the way across that creek with air. Without that air, your lines are going to sink. If you leave them collapsed, it'll sink in the water. If you fill them with water, it's going to sink in the water. You do have a good flotation device. Who knows? I mean, put a 5-inch hose under a vehicle and fill it with air for stabilization. You know, we're not going to do that every time. But if we run into that situation where maybe we need that, that's our only option. You know, it is there. We can do it. Baby gender reveal. You know, let's throw some confetti down in the deck gun and shoot air out of it. And I don't know. I mean, think about it. We can do a ton of things with this truck. Heck, that'd be a pretty good, what do they do? The color runs, you know? You imagine sitting at the end of a color run with that thing? Poof! blast some people with a bunch of color. It'd be cool. I don't know. Maybe different color for every outlet. It'd be neat. Use your imagination. Come up with something. But there are almost more reasons to use it than not. This is a demonstration of the auto sync controls. We are in auto mode right now. The air is auto balancing with our pump pressure. You'll see I'm changing the pump pressure up and down, and the air is equalizing with it. Now I'm going to switch it over to fixed mode. That's going to auto ramp that air pressure all the way up, almost 200 psi, and hold there. It gets very loud because it blows off. That's going to be kind of that dust and smoke you see. You go back to auto, it's going to go back to balancing. Easiest way to remember, always leave in auto, adjust with pump pressure. We got our CAFS compressor on. The water, or I say the air, in this valve here, the air is injected after this water. So we can completely close that. Alright, and then we can give them straight air. It's going to jump. I mean, you're putting air into it under pressure. That's just all the water in the hose line. We have our water gated off. And you see it jump. There is pressure on there. It's heavy. It's pushing you back even though
the hose feels light. But this is a way we can drain our hoses on scene and get rid of anything in them. Hey guys, I got about 15 hours into this video, so it's quite substantial. If you guys have any ideas for videos, maybe there's a video you want to do, maybe there's a video you want to see. If so, get a hold of Kayla. Maybe it's something you can help her out, maybe it's something you can do with her and, you know, show what you want to show. So, Kayla, thanks for all your time putting in, doing your videos, even though they're a little late, but you do get them in. If anybody else has an idea, let us know. Carol Baskins killed her husband.